Welcome to the Ask Weldon Show, episode 126. So it's been a while. September, October, November, December, about 3 months since my last show. Sorry for the delay. For those of you who are new, for those of you who are tuning back in, this is the Ask Weldon Show, where you essentially just ask a question about esport performance, high performance, esport psychology, video game, lifestyle, whatever it is that interests you, even if you're a traditional sports athlete. And then I answer them. And we've recently shifted to a call-in show style. So I'm using an app, which you'll see instructions for later, to call in your questions. And there's just so much that's happened since September that it's almost too much to get caught back up on again. So I'll wait for a live stream to do that. And for now, I think we should just jump into the questions. So let me pull up the first one. Okay.
Hi, Weldon. Sprint Speed here. A few episodes back, you mentioned the name B.F. Skinner and how you have a great disdain for the kind of work and research he's done in the field of psychology. And as somebody who's published in the field myself, albeit in social psychology, not really in biological processes, which I think is where your emphasis lies, I haven't really heard a lot of people specifically dislike his work or have specific huge negative things to say about the principles of operant conditioning. Would you be able to elaborate maybe on what makes it so that you don't like it that emphatically, or maybe how you don't really like to see it used? Thanks.
So the beef I have with Skinner comes from back in college when I started studying psychology, and then I had to study Freud and then Skinner, and then I basically just quit. And I didn't get back into psychology until my master's degree, where we studied real psychology, like psychology as we understand it today. And I was like, well, why didn't they tell us about this back then? If I thought that this was what psychology was, I wouldn't have been completely uninterested in the field. So my beef is really with the historical style of teaching, where you're like, okay, we start at the beginning of time and we go forward, and treating this information out of context and with the kind of preconception that teachers want to put you through the same thing that they had to go through, which is to learn all of these canons. Like, I have never been handicapped in any way in my professional work by not knowing enough about some historical person's interpretation of psychology before we learned something new and better about how the brain worked, right? You could probably use Einstein physics just fine without knowing anything about Newtonian physics, except the parts, of course, which are true and accurate. So the fact that we have to learn that stuff and that it turns people away from psychology is my real problem with it. And then there's the issue of reporting, which is let's say you take a Psych 101 class and you end up taking Freud and Skinner and one other person, and you never learn any real modern psychology. Then you leave that program thinking that operant conditioning is actually how the brain works, instead of having a more nuanced and proper understanding, instead of seeing it in the context of what it is that is actually our drivers. And so, yeah, that leads to my beef with the whole idea that, the general population is kind of in love with all of these large figures that drive theories of how the brain works that aren't really accurate. And that's up to the science reporting then to kind of go fix the problem. And that's just really annoying to have to spend so much time in communication to propagate these current theories that are more well understood in terms of the research, but aren't out into the masses. But then people like Skinner are kind of in a way their theories are kind of worshipped as well, this is how it works and that's why this happened, and explaining behavior from one layman to another. That's my problem with Skinner. Okay, let's go to question number 2. Thank you, by the way, Sprint Speed, for that great question. And this is how you ask a question, by the way. So you get the Anchor app, you download it, you go to anchor.fm/Weldon Green, and it gives you this page. Then you click call in, and you also follow me, and then you can just hit the button and talk into the phone.
Hey, Weldon. My name is Skylar, and I'm currently enrolled at Missouri State University and pursuing a degree in psychology. I plan to apply for internships as a sports psychology trainer at Immortals, TSM, G2, basically any place that I think might take me. And I was wondering if you had any advice on how I could get a job after graduation. Uh, Thank you for your time. Bye.
Okay. Thank you, Skylar, for the question. All right. So, Missouri State University, you're studying to be a sports psychology trainer. You're looking for an internship. I didn't catch whether you're in the bachelor's level. I guess yes, versus the master's level. Tips to get an internship. I don't really have one because I don't think that it's very easy to do internships depending on the state, especially in California. There's a lot of legal ramifications to jump through, and then you have to so you end up paying a lot of money to do an internship, which is why you're not seeing a lot of esport teams do internships, because you have to have them above board and legal. You usually have to pay a salary, and then on top of that, you are expected to train the person, and you're expected to show that you actually train them, which means you need to put them under somebody, and then you need to hold that person accountable for training the intern. And so I don't think it's likely that you're going to find a lot of success in getting internships there. You might be able to find volunteer work. Also, maybe unlikely because the competition is very fierce. You have to differentiate yourself somehow. But to your original question, or your final question, which is how do you get a job after you graduate, I also don't know how many years it is till you graduate, so hopefully you didn't say that in the question and I missed it. But I would say essentially that the only answer that I know how to give is to build a brand. That I didn't really think that there were going to be any sports psychology jobs that you apply for, and certainly that's the case. It was kind of told to us, and it was also pretty observably transparent, that if you go and you search, high performance coach, it's not like a job that people advertise for to have on their staff. That's just not something that people have in their budget. So the successful sports psychology trainers are people who've created their own jobs. They go and they sell their own services to teams as consultants, and they build their own brands, and they reach out and they do a lot of biz dev, and they do a lot of networking. So what I would recommend is start right now with the business classes. Learn the basics of business finance and how to start a small business in your state, and where you should start a small business, and how you kind of run it as a freelancer. And then just start thinking about how you do content marketing. So search content marketing on Google, and then listen to the podcast of the big content marketers, and then just kind of pick a medium of content and start creating it as your main form of marketing, and that will be how you build your brand, which is then how you build your consulting business, which is how you sell your services. So that is the thing that I did, and that's the only thing that I know that's successful in sport psychology and high performance coaching. I don't know of any other path other than getting the one random job that kind of pops up and is advertised for, which, okay, let's say there's 10,000 people around the world who are qualified to be a high performance esport coach, and there's 2 jobs I think that were advertised, actually apply for this position. It's not likely. Odds. It's much better to aggressively sell to orgs, and then also to get called when they want your services, essentially, in that vein. So yeah, that's my answer to that question, and thanks for calling in. All right. By the way, in between each question, I'm kind of just throwing the answers up on the app, because you can listen to the show also as a podcast in the Anchor app. Another reason to follow me there if you don't want to hear it on YouTube. So let's jump into the next question.
Yo, what up, Weldon? I just wanted to ask how to find motivation in your day-to-day life. For example, I want to wake up early and go to the gym every day, but I just find such a lack of motivation, such a lack of willpower. Even though I try to work on it, I just don't seem to be finding the right ways to work on that. So I was wondering if you could help me.
Okay, so your name in the app is HDog. You kind of sound like HDog, so that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for the question. And just to be clear and above board, I'm not the best person to ask for this because I also suck at this exact skill, which is how do you wake up with motivation? I usually try to do everything that is important for me in the morning because later on in the day, I kind of, if I don't have good momentum kind of running out of that, then I find it hard to get started. But basically, I want you to kind of flip your mind around in terms of motivation and discipline, and I want you to think of motivation as intrinsic. I want you to define things that motivate you as things that you actually find yourself randomly doing. Okay? So, like, if you don't find yourself in the gym every day, then don't say that you're motivated to do that. But if you do find yourself playing video games every day, then say, wow, I must be motivated to play video games. Then ask yourself, okay, but if I want to go to the gym every day and I'm clearly not motivated by this, what am I motivated by that I can use to discipline myself to then go to the gym, that I can use to value the gym thing more? Okay? So motivation is often used as a term to say, like, how can I get motivated? And the answer is people are motivated. You are motivated. The things that you're doing, that's what's motivating you, right? And the things that you're not doing, those things are not motivating you, right? So observe your reality, H-Dog, and be like, okay, I'm doing these things, I'm not doing these things. So these things are motivating me, these things aren't. So then how can you bake the values into the things that you want to be doing into the things that are motivating for you, which is what this channel is all about, actually. The idea of, like, how can we take video games, something that is very motivating to people like me and you, and turn them into something that drives you to go to the gym. So, for example, you could read a lot of articles or follow a lot of fitness bloggers that talk about fitness and how it affects their lives. You could read articles associated with, like, performance. You could run little experiments in your life where you're like, okay, I'm going to exercise and then train in my video game. I'm going to exercise and then practice. You could follow my Snapchat, which... you could follow my Snapchat, which is very like kind of like everyday gym, and this is how it connects with sports psychology and how it connects to video games and kind of like my gym journey. I would say follow people who kind of inspire you and give you the emotions associated with motivation, and then essentially you have to kind of take those values and say, like, well, I want to be the kind of person who is super motivated to do this one thing perfectly, and so I do all of these other things that I don't enjoy very much for the long-term game, for the long-term benefit of what I know I really want down the road. And by the way, then it becomes easier to forgive yourself for a day off here and there because you're in this like very long-term plan. And if you kind of flip your definition of motivation like that and really start to try to figure out how to say, well, I don't necessarily enjoy this apparently, or I'm not super motivated by it, but how can I do it anyway because it fits in with what I want to be, with the kind of person I want to be. And then try to use the things that really drive you in life to drive those things. So for example, if you have kids, this is a really simple one to explain. All of a sudden you have these big motivators to, like, well, I want to be the kind of parent who's living longer, so I better go to the gym so I live longer so that I can be with my kids longer, right? So that's the simple way of explaining how it is that people can discipline themselves to do something that looks like they're more motivated to do, but actually they're motivated to kind of like be with their kids a little bit longer. They're using that to discipline themselves to do this other thing, which is harder. I hope that clarifies things for you, and hit me up on Snapchat for more details if you want, or Instagram also. I do the same story on Instagram mostly, so there's that as well. Okay, let's jump into the next question. Lucia James.
Hey, Weldon, I want to ask you how to help people who don't believe in psychology. I have found that there are many sportsmen who don't believe in psychology. They think that psychology isn't useful for them. So when I recommend some exercise or give them some advice, they just ignore it. So I want to know how I can help this type of people.
All right. Thanks, Lucia. Good question. So there's two parts to this answer. The first part is don't try. So if somebody needs to be convinced of something, there are plenty of people in the world, and there's a lot of people who are already looking for help and already believe in something that is real, right? It's like, how do you believe that the Earth is round? It just is. It's not like about belief or not. Anyway, so the easiest thing is to just find people who already understand the importance of psychology for them and want to work with you. And spend your energy seeking those people out instead of trying to convince the other people that you are working with. Unless you are obligated to work with those people. And that brings me to the second part of the question, which is when I'm working with a new set of people or people who I know I need authority with or to convince, you always start by getting context on their situation and then treating your credibility like a resource. Treating it like, okay, if you spend these dollars, they're gone. So you got to spend them wisely, okay? So you gather information, and then you try to construct the biggest win for them that involves the shortest amount of effort. And you put all of your chips on the table and you try to get them to do that one little thing, which should be a very little thing, and it should have a big impact on their life, their performance, their whatever it is, okay? And if it succeeds, you're in the door. And if it fails, then you either are out or you have to spend another X amount of time like building up more credibility with them in order to get another go at it. So that's the real kind of truth of it, is that you have a shot, and it better be one that is successful. If it's not, then sorry. You have to be better. You have to be better at like parsing people's lives and trying to find that one victory that you can hand them that will enable them to trust you a little bit more and give you more of their energy for the next kind of effort. Okay. I hope that was helpful, and good luck with those people you're trying to convince. Did you call them supermen? Like supermen who believe they can do it all? Don't need to say that. That kind of makes sense, actually. All right, that's all that I have for today. Those are the only call-ins. So hopefully by tomorrow, you guys will have hit up the anchor station and called in your questions, and we can get the show started again. I'm really excited to be able to do the show. I finally have this new computer, which you can't see. I'm pointing at right now. Might be able to see the box if I tilt the camera down, but I have this new computer I got for Christmas, thanks to my parents, and I'm able to finally produce the show with a video camera, something that I couldn't do before, and yeah. See you next time.